Welcome to the Alien Probe Podcast. In July of 2019, a truly bizarre series of events unfolded around California's Channel Islands. Over a number of days, groups of unidentified aircraft, which the Navy simply refers to as drones or UAVs, pursued that service's vessels, prompting a high level of investigation. During the evening encounters, as many as 6 aircraft were reported swarming around the ships at once. The drones were described as flying for prolonged periods in low visibility conditions and performing brazen maneuvers over the Navy warships near a sensitive military training range less than 100 miles off Los Angeles. Joining me today is Dr. Bill. Hi, Bill. You there?
Hey.
What's going on? How's the weather there in Florida?
It's getting hot.
Is it?
It was 88 degrees yesterday. It's probably going to be hotter today.
Yeah, you need a pool.
And what's that?
You need a pool. You put a pool
No,
in.
I don't want a pool. Until this last year, everybody had pools, but nobody used them. You saw that.
How come? They got those. They have those mosquito shields around them, don't they? So the bugs don't get in.
Yeah, but people, you see it where you are. People buy a house and they buy a pool, and then they have a pool party and they run the heater on the pool, and then they stop having pool parties when they get their bill for the heater.
Yeah, but you don't need to work you wouldn't even need a heater there.
Well, you don't need it here. You don't need it for the people like them. So we just had. We have a solar water heater that just the tank went out. So the solar water guy, he doesn't really do water heaters anymore, but he put ours in. So he said he put in a new tank. He's been doing this last year is like it's been fantastic for him because nobody really used their pools. Now everyone has to stay home and they want their solar water heater systems working.
Yep. It's been,
so
pools have been huge. Pools have been huge here this year or last year with the COVID thing.
Yeah, this guy, I was surprised because he's got a brand new truck. He's got another person working with him, but we'll take over the business in a few years. But yeah, he's doing great.
So last year, the way I kind of rolled, we're going to kind of look at it chronologically, I guess. Last, a filmmaker, Dave Beatty, it looks like, uncovered some details about the events centering around the Arleigh Burke class destroyer USS Kidd. The initial tense encounter culminated in the deployment of onboard intelligence teams, right?
Oh yeah, did you see that? The onboard, they call them Snoopy teams?
Well, the Snoopy team, we'll get to that. This, where it started though is, they were on the first night, July 14th in 2019. It appeared the incidents began with UAV sighting by the Kidd around 10 o'clock, and the deck logs. Go ahead.
We should say UAVs are drones.
Right.
For people.
Yeah, they're drones for people.
Yeah.
Deck logs like the one below. Well, people can't see this, but they provided information on the course and speed of the ship. Additionally, they record the relevant information about unusual events or changes in the ship's behavior. So, to your point, 2 drones, typically described as UAVs or unmanned aerial vehicles, were spotted by the Kidd, right? The ship's
Yeah.
So, the ship's nautical or otherwise photographic interpretation and exploitation team, as you referred to, the Snoopy team. Snoopy. See, so Snoopy
using consumer-grade cameras. That's our high-tech military.
Yeah, they can't get them anything better than that. They might lose them or they'll fall in the water or whatever. But they're like ants all over the ship. I guess they're like ants, or they deploy them on one of the deck logs. I saw that they deployed the Snoopy team on starboard. They tell them where to go to where the thing is. And I'm still waiting for the video of all this. I mean, there's been no video that came out, even with, the Freedom of Information Act release of information of all sorts of things to the public. I haven't seen any, but the Aegis equipped ship, like the Kid, has some of the most sophisticated sensors on Earth. And and your lovely, but yet the consumer grade cameras have kind of nimble spotted the recording team. Go ahead.
Yeah. Well, I should talk about how I got. We got on this topic. I was reading an article, and I mentioned it last week in that old True annual, which was for. They came out with this True magazine in 1966, which. Hang on, let me pull the cover here. It was True Report on Flying Saucers from 1966, True Flying Saucers Report number 1. And there's an article in there by Jacques Vallée, which takes excerpts from his book, which is UFOs in Space, Anatomy of a Phenomenon, which I have a paperback here. It was published 1965. Yeah, so they took an excerpt from his this book and put it in this magazine. And I was reading it in this magazine. Jacques Vallée. So to give a little more background from Jacques Vallée, I just rewatched Close Encounters of the Third Kind with Richard Dreyfuss, and it's a Spielberg movie.
How many times have you seen that, Bill? How many times have you seen that movie? What do you think?
What's that?
How many times do you think you've watched that movie? I think I've seen it like 15 times probably, because it was big.
I've seen it at least 3 times. And so I just rewatched. I haven't seen it for probably a long time. It came out in 1977. I didn't realize it was that old. I haven't seen it at least for 10 years.
Yeah, I haven't seen it for a long time either.
Yeah, I thought I had it because I do have DVDs. I was looking for it. I had to get it online to watch it.
You don't have the VHS?
But,
you don't have the VHS version?
Yeah. No. I thought I might. I was surprised I didn't have the DVD. I looked around for it. It was one of those movies. I'm like, well, I'm sure I have this movie, but it's probably one of those things that you give to the kids, and then they goes over to somebody else's house or something.
Yeah.
Anyway, so he had I think it was the article, it's A New Look at Saucer Mysteries. Yeah, this is it. But he breaks down the UFOs to different categories. Sort of getting off topic a little bit. He breaks them down into different categories. And coming back to the movie, Close Encounters of the Third Kind, there's a French guy. You know the French guy that's all through it? He's at the end. And he's sort of like running the whole program.
He was there at the end when they finally, all the people came back out. Yeah.
Yeah, and he's interrogating Richard Dreyfuss and the lady, and he's the main expert for the military or whatever that's running this program for the encounter. That character is based on Jacques Vallée, which is why he's French. And Jacques Vallée had broken down sightings, at least in that book, into different categories. And when I was reading this article, let me see.
Now I'll ask the same question I asked about Kehoe. Did he actually ever see a UFO? Do we know?
No, Kehoe never saw.
I know not Kehoe, but what about Jock? Did he ever actually see one?
I'm not sure. I have to look more into it. The Wikipedia article on him says that he saw a UFO in 1955 when he was a kid.
Well, that'll get you
interested. And that's why he got into it, because he saw a UFO, and that's why he became, obsessed with it and investigating it and all this other stuff. So I would put a question mark as to whether or not Jacques Vallée saw one, because this article doesn't say he saw one, but the Wikipedia article says he does. And once they get into the book and they find that out, but he breaks these UFOs down to different categories. And I should add, he also apparently in this book, he broke it down. So Close Encounters of the Third Kind, that's his terminology for UFO encounters. Jacques Vallée came up with that terminology.
Oh, well.
But he also has, in this thing, he has the first step towards a really scientific analysis of UFO phenomena is proper classification. So he breaks it down into different classifications. And I'm not going to read them all, but I'll just go to number 2. He says, number 2, they appear as huge cylindrical forms, often vertical, surrounded by cloud-like formations, which you saw in the movie, or generating secondary objects. And when I read that, I remembered these drone mystery articles that I'd read last year at the war zone. And then that comes into the ship being swarmed by drones.
Yeah, so when we say drones, we think of like quadricopters, or I mean, these things are like the Tic Tac thing, aren't they? They're like.
Well, I don't know. They're not giving it. They haven't given good descriptions of these. They're calling them UAVs. And when we talk about the Colorado mystery drones, it gets even better.
Oh, really?
The article on the destroyer being swarmed just came out. It came out on the 23rd. Today is the 26th, 27th?
Yeah.
27th.
So after the kid... go ahead.
But the event at the destroyers was before the events that happened in Colorado.
Oh, okay. So shall we get back on to the...
Yeah, let's go on.
Okay. Less than 10 minutes after the sighting, the kid advised the USS Rafael Peralta of the situation. Another, I don't know if it's a guided missile destroyer or which kind of ship it is. It doesn't say. The Peralta log showed that around 10 p.m. it activated its own Snoopy team. They also show the reports of additional sightings were coming from the USS John Finn. And you can see the deck logs here of the sightings and the deployment of the Snoopy team and whatnot. And the Finn simply reported that the UAV activity and deactivation of the ship's AIS transponder system. So, go ahead.
The AIS is the automatic identification system that's used for shipping.
Right.
And the destroyer, once they entered into a conflict or potential conflict, they shut off their AIS systems because it's used to track ships.
But ships and aircraft, it does everything since the Vincennes incident back in '90. You remember where we accidentally shot down an Iranian passenger jet. So now they're more.
Oh, yeah.
You may ask why we didn't just shoot them, and obviously we have a person that is in the know, and he says that since the Vincennes incident, they don't just shoot stuff. They're like, and it's actually legal for you to operate a drone and do this type of thing. I'm sure they would arrest you, but they say it's legal, but I think they would probably do something to you if you did this. But they can't, as we go along, okay, you're right, they deactivated the AIS system. I don't know if the AIS system automatically engages engages something automatically, so that
I think it's like the air traffic controller system, except for boats.
Right.
It sends out a signal and basically says, I am here. So other ships, it will show up as an identification on the other ship's radar or whatever systems, their GPS systems. And it just says, it's just to warn other ships that there's a ship in the area. I don't think you need radar. I think it'll work through a GPS type system.
Right.
And your contact, your Navy contact, will actually definitely be able to explain it to you better. I don't know these systems.
Well, yeah, and we'll revisit AIS in a minute, but the Peralta described a white light hovering over the ship's flight deck. And these things with lights on them, I'm always suspect if they got lights on. What do they have? Unless they've got some, unless they're trying to illuminate something, But the log reflects. Go ahead.
They also spotted a red flashing light.
Yeah. Well, what's interesting.
What's that?
It's interesting. It managed to match the destroyer's speed at 16 knots and a hovering position over the helicopter's landing pad.
Yeah. And it was 100 miles offshore.
Yeah. So where the encounter lasted like 90 minutes, and that's no drone I've ever. Of course, I don't have that much involvement, but they don't last 90 minutes.
That's a long flying time.
Yeah, it's longer than any drone that you or I could buy will last.
It was also under low visibility conditions of less than a nautical mile in at night.
Yeah.
So,
there was
also what I liked on this. What?
Go ahead.
What I liked on this was that the USS Kidd at 9:20 says there's multiple UAVs around the ship, and then they manned the Mark 87 stations, which you said was the
what I understand, it's a chain gun. Well, in this application, a Mark 87 means a few different things, I'm told. But in this case, it appears that it's a chain. They say manned the chain gun. I don't think they man them, as I understand. They don't man them. They used to man them. Now it's tied into somehow tied in, I believe, possibly to the other system.
They're auto defense for like missiles and things.
Yeah.
So they just throw a switch and it's supposed to target automatically. So they were
Well, when they
intentionally they activated their automatic defense systems.
Right, but they didn't do anything. And to me, it's like, well, let's fucking just shoot them. They're harassing a government warship. It's an attack of sorts. But yet, since the Vincent is, they're too small to be manned to buy anything that that we consider manned. I mean, it could be like a very small.
Well, what's
probably
interesting
not,
is when you go back and you look at some of these, and I'm just referring to the reports from flying saucers from outer space. Everybody that spots these drones, they show these different lights of different colors. There's times where there's a bigger one, and then there's smaller ones around the bigger one, and everybody looks at them and they go, I think it was 100 feet. That seems to be like the generic answer. And I think what it is when you're looking at something, if you don't have a frame of reference, you don't know how big it is. So in the 50s, when they were seeing these things, they're looking at them, and they were correlating their size with an airplane. So when we look up, we see a Cessna flying across. We know how big the Cessna is, and you can guess roughly how far away it is because we already know how big it is. Or we see a jetliner flying over. We know how far away it is roughly because we know how big these aircraft are. But I think this is also true with these drones, that everyone's looking at these drones, which fit the description of exactly of the description of UFOs in the 50s. And now everybody's saying the big drone is 10 feet and the little drones are 2 feet. But nobody knows how far away they are. These ships probably know how far away they are, but they haven't provided any information on this other than these logs, the ship's logs,
right.
Cruising logs.
Well,
apparently here, I'm looking at the article here, and it says that despite nearly 3-hour duration of the event, none of the warships involved appear to have been able to identify the drones. So this went on for 3 hours. Not just 90 minutes.
Well, one hovered over the helicopter pad. Can they not figure out how big the thing is based on that? I mean,
yeah, they would have a good idea how big it is at that. So, well, like I said, they haven't provided any film. They have their Snoopy teams running around filming it on their their cameras and stuff. They haven't released any of this film.
Yeah.
Which that would be interesting to see.
It's interesting. So they're trying to figure out where these things came from, and the investigation was focused somewhat on the ORV Alguita, a 50-foot catamaran. And, the Alguita, as you have seen, it was a focus of the investigation. They had drones on board, but, the drones really, they were just commercial type drones. So they weren't able to do anything like this.
They said that they were small and they didn't go far from the ship.
Right.
And I'm sure the drones they have could not run for 3 hours.
Yeah.
So, when I was looking at this, the only, and somebody mentioned that in the comments for the article too, the only explanation is that it came from another ship in the area. There was a freighter in the way, or it came from a submarine.
Yeah. Well, I didn't.
And the operation parameters for these drones is highly advanced. So we're not talking about, this isn't like, these are higher than, more effective than the best commercial grade drones out there.
Well, probably Chinese sub, obviously.
Yeah, all the Chinese stuff that we get is excellent.
Well, it's interesting that the catamaran Alguita was off the, cruising around by San Clemente Island, but I think we've discounted them as being anything, Well, we have. I don't know if they have.
Well, yeah, they said that the investigators conceded that they needed to keep looking. The Alguita was a poor fit, but it was a primary suspect. So they were still, it says they're grappling with determining the intent behind the incidents.
Well,
I agree with you. They should have just shot one down to see what happens. It's unmanned.
Yeah, the FOIA disclosures now we know it happened again on July 15th. This time the Peralta was the first to spot the objects. And the kid also just spotted at 9 p.m. The kid also just again spotted the drones and again deployed its Snoopy team.
This is the second.
Second.
Two different events.
Right.
2 different nights.
Second night.
Yeah. Okay.
9:20, the kid logged multiple UAVs around the ship. 17 minutes later, the command was issued to man. I think it's the Mark 87 station. I don't know how old these. Maybe they haven't been fitted with any automated Mark 87, but maybe they do man them. But anyway,
Well, they don't man them. They have someone that throws a switch to turn it on.
Yeah,
they have another switch to fire.
They say man it, but I think they just touch the screen.
Activate the killing.
They don't want to activate the chain gun that could cut anything in half.
Yeah. Activate the killing robot. The murder bots.
Yeah, they say it's referring to the Mark 87's electro-optical director, that is the component of the massive infrared and optical turret known as the Mark 20 electro-optical sighting system, the EOSS, located above the bridge. And it was originally... go ahead.
They generated a lot of data from this, because I think those guns will record their inputs, and they have film, they have photographs, they have radar inputs, they have infrared inputs.
Yeah,
so they have a lot of data on this stuff.
Yeah, it looks like the Mark 20, the EOSS system, it was originally helped to direct the ship's 5-inch gun, but provides surveillance and tracking over long distances. So this thing, you're right, they do have a lot of data on this. I don't know why. Well, they know more than we're going to probably ever find out.
Well, I think releasing the data would also sort of show the vulnerabilities of the equipment. So if you come out with a report and say, yeah, we were swarmed with a bunch of drones, and this is what our crappy data looks like, it will reveal strengths or weaknesses in the equipment. And all that stuff those tracking equipment, those sensors, and all that stuff are highly classified.
Right.
Of course.
Of course. So then the USS Russell reports a flurry of activity, and it's got like every 5 minutes. This guy, whoever did some speed writing here, it's like 9:15, 9:26, 9:28, 9:38, 9:40, 9:42. You got to be writing fast. The drone spotted, 1,000 feet elevation, 900 feet elevation, 700 feet elevation. So this, whoever was doing this tech log was writing like crazy.
Oh yeah.
It's interesting that they still use, pen and paper for this. The Rafael Peralta received a radio call from a passing cruise ship, the Carnival Imagination, notified them, the drones aren't ours. Don't shoot.
Yeah, don't fire.
And they had seen as many as 5 or 6 drones maneuvering nearby. Then they made a deck log of the radio call from the Carnival ship.
Yeah, it's just crazy.
And then it continued into the night. The Peralta first recording 2 UAVs and 4 UAVs nearing their ship. And then midnight, the USS I mean, these things are just harassing all these ships. They're just buzzing around.
Yeah,
I mean, what is this?
This is crazy stuff.
I mean, this time it's a 3-hour event. None of the warships were involved were able to identify the drones. The contrast to the first night, the second set of encounters occurred closer to shore because they had maneuvered. They're just on maneuvers out there, and so they just got close. They just got closer to the shore. I don't know if this is going on. I'm like, I don't know if we want to get closer, to the U.S. Let's kind of drag if this has got to happen, maybe we should move farther out into sea. And, let's see how long these things can stay with us. But it's just so there was obviously an official investigation now, and it went way up the chain. I mean, it launched a formal investigation on July 18th. The Navy liaison to the Coast Guard began requesting updates for information on the vessels involved, citing higher level visibility. So, and they're requesting via email updates on the information. Then we got the special agent with Naval Criminal Investigation at the NCIS assigned to Third Fleet. Yeah. And, these things are just, I mean, they're sending it up the chain pretty quickly. I mean, it's July 18th. The names are redacted. They just give their what their rank is. We've got lieutenant commanders and commanders, and as you go through each email, it gets a little bit higher up. Well, no, this one's kind of the same. It got kicked up, but the LA FBI was included eventually, and preliminary information indicated that the Alguita did have, we talked about their grunt drones on board. Yeah. There's a lot of focus again on them, but they, they're contacting the Alguita, and the Alguita's going, not we have. But I don't know, why are they cruising around that military island? I mean, I thought they shouldn't even be over there, but whatever.
Well, anybody can go around those islands. So that really struck me with this is if this had been happening in the 1960s,
they'd have blown them up.
Everyone would be saying it's UFOs.
Yeah.
And when we talk about the Colorado mystery, there's the drones that were flying around in Colorado. Somebody actually called the sheriff, and the sheriff ignored the call because it's like, oh, it's just a UFO call. And that is policy with the sheriff's department, at least that sheriff's department, that if someone calls in reporting a UFO, they just ignore the call.
So because there's so many UFOs, or because there's so many drunks?
I don't know. I think it's just they just write it off as being a crazy person.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, I thought we were getting beyond that now, where we're going, yeah, it's some, but what are they going to do? You know, you're deploying a police officer to investigate a UFO sighting. I mean, that's a little, you know, it's, yeah, what are you
well,
going
they
to
used
do?
to, well, yeah, I've seen something strange. You call them up, say, I've seen something strange. You know, they should send it could be a plane having problems or anything like that. They should send someone out to take a look.
Well, I
Could
guess
be a car.
you
Could
sent
be
me,
a helicopter.
you sent me
Could be a
something.
lot of things.
You sent me something. Blue Book's not dead. Did you send me something about that Project Blue
Yeah,
Book?
I sent an article. I mean,
I didn't. You know, I'm trying to open everything, but I just remember.
It was in the New York Times, July 23rd, 2020. No longer in the shadows. Pentagon's UFO unit will make some findings public.
Well, is it still active, or are they going to?
Statements that it disbanded a once covert program to investigate unidentified flying objects. The effort remains underway.
Wow.
Renamed and tucked inside the Office of Naval Intelligence.
If you're out there, Blue Book, I'm able to re-up and well, not re-up, but get back into the service.
Sign me up.
And I'll be happy to join. Actually, I'm ready to retire. I could probably do it for free. You know, so that'd be a bonus for you.
You need to buy a suit.
And I could probably write it off though. It's for business.
Yeah, buy a suit or coveralls.
A black suit or black
and sunglasses.
Suit. Am I gonna have that hat too? That weird hat they wear.
What? You have to get a hat.
They're wearing that hat from 1930s.
They have so with the Navy warships, they had they have final thoughts would be why would anyone operate drones near a wavy warship in such a brazen manner? Long duration distances, speeds excess of 45 miles an hour, traverse at least 100 nautical miles. They're assuming that the drones were launched from LA and not from a ship or an island out off the coast.
Right.
And they were able to locate and catch a destroyer traveling at 16 knots in conditions with less than 1 nautical mile of visibility.
Yeah, these things
coordinate at least 5 to 6 drones simultaneously. Significant security breaches and obviously very advanced drone technology.
Yeah, and this is just.
And then these teams were a small part of the sophisticated suite of surveillance capabilities and advanced sensors, including the ability to detect radio emissions. You know, these warships have jammers on them. They should have been able to. I don't understand why they just didn't flip on. Well, they would have screwed up radio communications and off the coast. But they also had the ability to jam frequencies and stuff. Ability to detect radio emissions in the vessel's vicinity. So they, like we were saying before, they have a ton of data from this, and they haven't released any. They've released barely any of it, but it would be interesting to know what their equipment show. But the problem is, as I said before, they show by releasing this information, it shows the limitations and the abilities of the equipment. That's a problem.
What, you know?
So you want to talk about the Colorado stuff?
Yeah, but real quick, we'll stay on this for a minute. Keep that in mind, though.
That happened in
19
July of 2019, and then in the winter of 2019, a bunch of drones were seen over Colorado, and there was a little bit of a concern because they were within like 60 miles, 30 miles, probably 30 miles of Minuteman missile bases, which is a lot of them out there. And they said they were unidentified drones. The serious drone reports were taken by the 90th Security Forces of Public Affairs Office at F.E. Warren Air Force Base. It was December 2019. Bizarre story of fleets of unidentified drones operating in the airspace of northeastern Colorado and western Nebraska. Scores of reports and creation of the task force. This task force had everybody and their brother in it. Had the FBI. There's a whole list later on. So, what else?
Well, this is the one we said
they
that
don't know the origins. What's that?
it was reported to the sheriff and he didn't do anything, but at what point did it get elevated to?
That was one of the sheriffs was running around looking at it, but there's another in another town or something that the sheriff just ignored it.
Wow.
They said that air base out there says it's not them. They don't know the origin. The Air Force Office of Special Investigations got involved. The had a closed-door task force meeting held on January 6, 2020, which apparently had a ton of these groups in it. It says, and then they had the space potatoes.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah, which were not dropped by the drones. But this is interesting. This is what I remember from reading this article last year. And reading the Jacques Vallée, here's a line in this article. Sheriff's deputies are responding and seeing the drones as well. They reported seeing a mothership, 6 foot in diameter, flanked by 10 smaller drones, some fixed wing, some not. And this is exactly a 1950s, 1960s UFO sighting. And in the 1950s and 1960s, we didn't have this drone technology.
Did they describe what the drones looked like? I mean, were they the Tic Tac style, or were they like flying saucers, or?
I don't. It's really vague. And there was one sheriff's deputy that had night vision goggles he put on.
Right.
And also the weather conditions when these were happening, the skies were clear, but it was real windy. It's not optimal drone weather. I thought that was interesting. But one of the sheriff's deputy had night vision goggles, and he was looking at it, and he thought he could see wings, and he said it had like a 10-foot wingspan at his guess. But you've used night vision, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's not. I don't know what the quality of his night vision goggles are, but you get a lot of sort of flaring. And
some weird aura. It's like aura. I could describe like aura around the lighted part of things that you see. Yeah, and the things were again with the lights. The other sighting reported flashing or steady white, red, or green lights and flashing blue lights. I mean, this smells
just like in the 50s and 60s when they report these things.
Yeah, I mean they're just not. Yeah, I don't know. It's just lights on spaceships and stuff. I don't really. Why do they need lights? Because they don't run into each other, or are they trying to attract attention to them? It doesn't make any.
I don't know.
It doesn't make really.
I don't know. This is. What also getting a kick out of this is that the level of government interest in this is similar to what we saw with UFO sightings, at least in the 50s.
Right.
So from this article, and we should say this is from the War Zone, and internal Air Force emails show confusion and concern over Colorado's mystery drones, and the article's from February 24, 2020. It says the claims that the drone sightings were merely a mass delusion clearly seems to not be the case, given the response by the officials at Warren Air Force Base and reports they cite. The sightings were taken seriously enough that military institutions and federal agencies such as NORAD, U.S. NORTHCOM, MAGCOM, IPOSI, FBI, DHS, and USAF, Strategic Deterrence and Nuclear Integration Directorate, and the FAA were involved in investigating the sightings. It's like everybody was jumping in on this to investigate it. And what's interesting is they've discovered nothing. So here you have something similar to what's happening with the warships off the coast, but this is happening in far inland. They're not saying they're not mistaken identity, public paranoia. They're not saying it's eyewitness misidentification, objects due to confirmation bias. That's that. So then the last article, which is newly released FAA documents give unprecedented look into Colorado drone swarm mystery, July 15, 2020. The drones were seen in Colorado, Nebraska, Kansas. FAA, which is leading task force to solve the drone mystery. Not only is the confusion with the agency made clear, allude to a unique arrangement in which a large drone seems to have been accompanied by a fleet of smaller ones. This is the Type 2. This is Jacques Vallée's Type 2A drones. Type 2A UFOs.
Oh. And this says it's was during Colorado. It's a large drone described 5 to 6 feet in diameter with a cylindrical shape and a red front.
Well, I got a kick out of the cylindrical shape because Jacques Vallée says they appear as huge cylindrical forms, often vertical, surrounded by cloud-like formations. So instead of saying saucer, you say cylinder, and then people will think you're crazy.
Yeah, change it to Tic Tac, giant Tic Tac, makes it better.
Yeah.
You know, I guess there was a Nebraska sighting as well too. You see that further down.
Yeah, and this I've been. What did they say? This is once the aerial activity stops, it appeared both federal and state agencies quickly dropped the matter. And a lot of this stuff, everything that I'm reading here is like mirrors this stuff that I've been reading from the 50s. Detailed description of unusual formations of unmanned aerial devices were reported by law enforcement officers and other credible witnesses. 16 counties in Colorado and Nebraska. Each agency contacted advised at least one deputy has witnessed the activity. Flying in a grid-type pattern for several hours at a time in less than optimum flying conditions, high winds, and storm-like conditions, which also fits Jacques Vallée's things. His criteria, which says surrounded by cloud-like formations, Type 2. So these definitely fall into the Type 2 category from Jacques Vallée. Reported operating 2 to 16, 6 feet. Well, the sizes are interesting because they're saying they range from 2 to 16 and they appear to be approximately 6 feet width and length. And I think that's sort of visual bias because people, if this was in the 50s, people would be seeing, these sheriff's deputies would be seeing these objects and they would say, oh, I think it's this far away and it's 100 feet or 50 feet long, 50 feet wide. But now everyone knows about drones. And we're used to seeing drones, so when they see these objects, they're going, oh, it's 6 feet, and it's 200 to 300 feet away. But you don't know how far it is. You have no reference to it. But they also say that they can't hear any sound. Drones are really noisy.
Yeah.
I went online to YouTube because I thought drones were really noisy. And most of the drone videos that you see on YouTube, they don't have any sound of the drone.
Right.
But there were a few videos on YouTube of people recording the sounds from the drones, and some of these drones, just the little ones that people can buy, can do 75 decibels. These things are pretty loud.
Yeah. 95
decibels will cause hearing problems. Hearing can damage your hearing. So it's between 45 and 75 decibels for a drone that most people can pick up. So if these things were bigger than that, they must have been cranking out some sound too, and they didn't hear any sound.
Yeah, well, they weren't drones with. They're obviously some other technology. I mean, are they from here? Are they extraterrestrial origin?
Well, one of the things you can definitely say is they are advanced technology, and this was this is one of the issues. Is that somebody? It could be a company, could be, whatever, could be. Could be genuine UFOs, but whatever it is, it's advanced technology. that's confusing the hell out of people.
Well, it could be us.
Big drone,
you know,
got a big drone, big drone that may be stationary in the area. There were reports of a larger drone potentially landing and taking back off from an airport. They said it was cylindrical. Anyway, so we're seeing drones which fit the descriptions of UFOs from the 1950s.
Were the 50s we're all assuming it's saucers. Were they? Jock, did he describe them? Is there any particular shape?
Look at an airplane. If you look at an airplane is a cylinder with a pointy end. The ends are pointy.
Yeah.
If you look at a saucer is also a cylinder. If you flip it up on its side, it could be a circle, and then you can rotate it down, and it can also look like a cylinder with pointy ends. I think the word cylinder is a safer word than saying saucer shaped.
Yeah.
Because you can look at I don't know, how would you describe a modern day drone? It looks more like looks like a Tic Tac thing, right?
Well,
or sort of squarish.
When we went through UFO, one of the episodes we did, we described the different UFOs, and a degree of them in the 50s were actually described as cigar shaped. And to your point, I think that might have been, that's what they look like when you're looking at them from the side, maybe.
Yeah.
And then if they could be tipped up, but the way these things fly, you're going to be able to see when they're darting all over the place, you can see every aspect of them. So,
it's night. It's at night. It's in the middle of Nebraska or Colorado. You know how dark it is out there? There's no moon.
Yeah.
So you're either going to rely on the lights of whatever the drone is or whatever it is. And like the one guy with the night vision goggles, which was a smart thing to pull out and use. So this is very similar to the events that happened with the destroyer off the coast of California. I love this too. They had a closed door meeting attended by 77 people from the FAA, FBI, DHS, Air Force, Special Investigations, Air Force Base, Senator's Office, state and local representatives, including sheriff's personnel from 12 Colorado counties and 6 Nebraska counties, Nebraska State Patrol, Colorado Information Analysis Center, and Colorado Fish and Wildlife. The meeting did not provide an answer or new leads. What a shock.
Yeah.
But they said, this one sheriff goes, without evidence that any criminal activity has been involved, he goes, Martin set the matter aside. He goes, I'm not in charge of airspace, which reminds me of like Rupert, the early Project Blue Book guy.
Yeah.
Ruppelt. Somebody asked him about like space aliens on the ground or whatever, and his response was, he's like, call the Army. I'm not in charge of the ground.
Yeah, it's
so like
I'm
not in charge of the airspace.
Was he the officer that was accompanying Hynek, or was this somebody else?
Yeah, Ruppelt.
He was
the officer.
Hynek.
Somebody was talking to somebody threw that question at him at some point. So call the Army.
I do the sky. I do the sky. I don't do any of that. I don't know. It just seems that it could be us testing. When anything's got lights on it, it always leads me to believe that the extraterrestrials really, I can't imagine them designing these things. Make sure we put lights on these things, because why?
Yeah, well, it's something's going on. This matches the older sightings from the 50s and the 60s. There's another thing in this article that I love is all these agencies are saying it's not them. The military base is saying it's not them. All the military that have come out publicly with it are saying they're not doing this stuff. And with these drone sightings in Colorado and stuff, they're saying unclear what, if any, laws or regulations have been broken or violated. Several documents refer to local law enforcement officers hearing gunshots from the ground during several drone sightings. At the January 6th meeting, federal representatives advised local officials that it was a violation of federal law to shoot at an aircraft.
Yeah.
So if a UFO flies over your property, you can't shoot at it.
With you and...
But I wonder if it lands on your property, I wonder if you can shoot at it.
Back in the day when we used to go out shooting, you and I and our friends, if something like this flies over, do you think we might have, think we might have shot at it?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. When we were kids?
Yeah, when we were teenage, when we were out just shooting around.
Because if it looked like a flying saucer, yeah. We would have shot at it.
Shoot it down.
And then we would have ran like hell.
Yeah, well, of course. Well, if it would have fell to the ground, we would have thought, well, what's that? Let's check it out and see what's in it.
Yeah, definitely.
But the big ones are 6 to 16 feet. They say, because you said it's all about how you can conceive of how big it is depending on what's behind it. It's night, and they don't fly them. Are we flying during the day? Now have you heard of any daytime sightings of these things? I mean, we hear of daytime UFO sightings, but.
Nobody's seen them during the day, probably because if they were doing it and they had lights on, you just wouldn't notice them.
It just feels like it feels like it's us, based on the lights and night, and I think we're testing basically. We got to fly somewhere, and we have to fly over occupied areas, to see people's reaction.
My best guess would be it's a company or the military which has denied that it's doing this. So it might be a private company that's testing advanced drone technology.
Right.
But whatever they're running it in very bad conditions, and it's very high tech stuff. It's very advanced technology. So I think the government would be very interested in the people that were doing this, if it was people. So the one off the coast of California, the possibility is it could be a foreign power is launching drones from a submarine to test capabilities of U.S. warships.
Right.
And but the stuff in Colorado and Nebraska, I don't know. That would suggest that it was a company that was testing drone technology. But the thing that I found most interesting is that these descriptions and these events would, fit with 1950s, early 1960s. They would be flat out UFO sightings.
Yeah, we don't have anything like that back then, but I certainly think we could develop something of this nature. But like you said, they don't make any noise. What's the propulsion? It's and the hovering. What's that?
They're soon going to be propeller based.
Yeah, I mean, it has to be electric, I guess, or something that powers it for some length of time, I suppose.
Here's an interesting quote from that New York Times article on the new Project Blue Book, which I don't know what they call it, and this is from Marco Rubio. He expressed concerns that China, this is the same stuff they were saying in the 50s about UFOs. He expressed concerns that China or Russia or some other adversary had made some technological leap that allows them to conduct this sort of activity. Mr. Rubio said that some of the unidentified aerial vehicles over U.S. bases, so there's stuff that we really haven't heard about, possibly exhibit technologies not in the American arsenal. But he also noted maybe there was a completely sort of boring explanation for it, but we need to find it out.
Yeah, it's hard to say.
So anyway,
it's
the Project Blue Book is alive and well.
And with the Colorado thing,
deploying. What's that?
The Colorado thing, the FAA concluded no military involvement, which that's very important. Remember, it wasn't us.
Yeah.
Wasn't us, dog.
Yeah.
It was somebody else.
So some entity is deploying very advanced technology over U.S. Navy ships, remote areas of the United States, and unreported, apparently, according to Senator Rubio, over U.S. military bases. So welcome to the 1950s.
Yeah, I think we just and what is the new? Well, it's probably the Chinese. It's the Chinese, man. It's got to be. Again, it's a Chinese out. It's a Chinese.
Yeah.
It's probably us. They're probably security drones, used to patrol the missile bases and make sure that it's a new technology rather than having a Jeep fly around and a bunch of cameras. It's so much better to have a drone fly over.
Those articles, they were saying that some of these missile bases do have anti-UAV stuff and UAVs, and they kept saying it wasn't theirs. When they contacted the missile bases, they were going, no, it's nothing to do with us.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of denial going on.
What would you expect them to say?
Well,
if they got anti-UAV things and they're not shooting at them, so it must be them, right? Who knows where they came from?
Well,
it's just bizarre.
It could be completely, if these are, if they're using nuclear powered or nuclear batteries on these things, that's a possibility.
Right. Yeah.
You can have a nuclear battery on one of these things, and then you can run it around for days. But I don't know anything about nuclear batteries.
Yeah.
I know they use some of them on the new Mars rover has a nuclear battery on it.
Oh, it's not. Oh, that's interesting. I thought it was like solar.
No, they wanted. They were having too much trouble with dust on the older rovers because the panels gradually accumulate a lot of dust, and the panels also degrade with time. So, as I've experienced with our panels. So nuclear is the way to go. So maybe they're nuclear-powered, military experimental nuclear-powered drones.
All right, we're going to wrap it up. Thank you, Dr. Bill.
All right.
Appreciate you joining us. Thanks for listening to the Alien Probe Podcast. Visit us on all podcast platforms. Visit us at Alien Probe Pod at Instagram. Email us at alienprobepodcast@gmail.com with questions, comments, or suggestions. See you next time.